Far From Home was again directed by John Watts, returning after he directed Spider-Man Homecoming. Wow, I'm gonna tell you right now, I loved this movie. This is what summer blockbusters are supposed to be. It's so fun, and somehow it's still fresh, even though this is the 4th Spider-Man movie we've got in like 5 years. The fun high school vibe from Homecoming persists here. It actually feels like a real high school with real high school characters interacting with each other. Unlike the other Spider-Man films we got, which just felt like a movie high school. And while I definitely like the characters in Homecoming, I like them even more in Far From Home. They're just more fleshed out in this movie, especially MJ, who I didn't particularly like in Homecoming. I just thought she was trying way too hard to put on some fake cool persona, and it just really annoyed me. But here we get a closer, more personal look at MJ, and she opens up a bit. And I loved it! And the romance between she and Peter just works so well. And this goes for the rest of the characters too. They're just more fleshed out, and they're just fun to be around. You can see each of their own individual personalities. And when Peter is just with his friends hanging out, I'm still equally as invested in the story as when he's fighting a monster. And that's when you know you've written good characters. And Peter is just awesome. I love Tom Holland's portrayal. He is, in fact, my favorite Spider-Man, and the journey he goes through here is one we haven't quite seen before. Yes, we've had Peter have to come into his own several times, but not quite like this. Without giving any spoilers away as to what the story contains, because there are a lot of spoilers in this movie, Peter is tasked with having to live up to Iron Man's legacy after Iron Man's heroic actions in Endgame. And while Tony is obviously not in the film, he is plastered all throughout. It's almost like he's a side character. And it's so nice to see those connective threads not only throughout this movie, but through the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. Marvel follows suit here with their just excellent world building. It really does feel like a post-Endgame world they're living in. They explain everything pretty well through dialogue and through certain situations. So I hear many complaints today that Marvel just uses the same formula for each movie. And while there is an essence to truth to that, they still come up with fresh, new stories for each movie. Even if there are little structural things that are generally the same in each one. And the story here is just so rich. I will not say much about it, because I don't want to give spoilers away, but it's exciting, it's engaging, it's funny, it's thought-provoking even, and it's easily one of my favorite stories in the entire MCU. The story is just so socially important today. The story deals with fake news and manipulation of information and the spreading of that. And speaking of which, this will actually be my first video uploaded to a new service called LBRY. It's spelled LBRY. I recommend you guys check it out. It helps give control back to content creators, and LBRY does not censor any videos, which is what YouTube is starting to do. So a link to my channel will be in the description. I am considering moving over to that platform completely, but I'll see how it performs first. Anyway, back to the movie. So when I first heard that Mysterio was going to be the villain, I was skeptical. He just seemed like such a goofy, campy, outdated character to put into this movie. I just didn't think it would work well today. I am so happy to say that he is now one of my favorite Marvel villains. They did such an excellent job just updating his character for 2019 film. Like, kudos to you, Marvel, you've done it again. We didn't think the Guardians of the Galaxy would work, and look how that turned out. And Jake Gyllenhaal's performance is so fun to watch. He totally owns this role. I'm not going to go into details as to what they are, but there are certain surreal sequences in this movie featuring Mysterio that are just so mesmerizing. Those are some of my favorite parts of the film. And the special effects were fantastic, of course. I mean, it's Marvel. And the humor was really good, for the most part. I love Ned. He is just so great in the role. Every scene he is in, I'm just smiling. Such a good friend for Peter. And Happy, who sort of takes on like a mentor role for Peter after Iron Man's passing, was hilarious as well. And I liked having his character be a guide for Peter in this film too. He was less of a guide than Iron Man was, which just shows the progression of Peter coming into his own even more. Almost every aspect of this movie was just on point. However, I do have a couple of very minor problems with it. So for one, when it starts off, there's a lot of exposition in the dialogue. It just feels like the characters are talking to the audience, just telling them things they need to know, which I do not like. However, as the movie progressed, it didn't have that issue so much. It was pretty much just the first like 10 to 15 minutes. Also, some of the humor with the teachers just fell flat. it got old after a while. But that's about it. One other very, very minor thing was that I would like to have seen more battles between Peter and the villains. But there was already so much in this movie, I can see why that might feel a little bit bloated. The battles we got were awesome, and I loved them. And they were long too. But I wouldn't have minded seeing more. So amazing, thought-provoking story that works so well for 2019. So important. Action is good. Humor is mostly great. Characters are more fleshed out. Villain is an absolute win. It's paced well. It fits so nicely in with the rest of the MCU. I'm gonna have to give Spider-Man Far From Home a 9.5 out of 10. Guys, I so recommend checking this movie out. I don't know who couldn't like it. It's so fun. Just an overall blast. Thanks for checking out my review. Don't forget to check me out on LBRY. Please make sure to like and subscribe, comment what you thought below, and I'll see you for my next review.